Most creators don't actually have a content problem, and they don't actually have a motivation problem either. What they usually have is a clarity problem. If you're good at what you do, but you quietly feel like you should be further along by now, then you're in the right place. Welcome to Better Days. I'm your host, Daniel Kosmala, and I'm joined by my co-host, Bekah Donovan. Bekah, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very excited that we're doing this.
Me too. How do we know each other?
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? We know each other as you were my boss for a while.
Not
Somewhere.
that long. Wait, was it like, I guess it was like 2 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. It was about 2 years before I transitioned over to another side.
Before you decided to transition. Yeah, that's
Yes.
a good way to describe it.
And we just
Well,
had
thanks.
such a strong bond that we've just not been able to part ways.
It's true. We do. We keep up despite living an ocean away from one another and having never lived in the same country or really been in the same place for more than like a few days at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. We send each other memes on Instagram. That's the way we stay connected.
And to be fair, that's how I communicate with some of the closest people in my life.
Yeah.
My wife, my brother, my friends, like I communicate via sending ridiculous memes and reels
Yeah.
and TikToks to people.
What need is there for actual conversation when you can just send a meme?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, this podcast is going to be all about kind of some of the stuff that we shared experiences doing together, which is
Mhm.
I'm excited about because I have been doing this I've been in marketing for 15 years, but I've been working explicitly with creators for 6+ years, 6.5, almost
Mhm.
actually even more than that, I guess, technically, if you include the experience before that. But it involves being in the weeds in businesses, consulting, coaching, creating education content for all those people. So I'm really excited to kind of have all of that stuff that's locked up in here just pulled out, and beyond that, to interview people who have expertise in areas that I don't, and talk to maybe even creators that I've worked with about their experiences and before and after and all those kind of things. So that's kind of what you can look forward to in future episodes. But for today, I thought it might be good to just kind of talk about my experiences and maybe, Bekah, even some of yours working with creators over the
Mhm.
years. So how's that sound as a place to start?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic place to start. Well thought out, Daniel.
Thanks. Uh, I'm curious from your perspective, what experiences do you have over the last few years that have shaped how you think about creators and creator growth?
It's interesting because my position on it has changed so much, even in the brief period of time that's been since I finished working with Uscreen in July last year. And I've essentially, off the back of that, gone into executive production for video and podcasts. That's the thing that I do now. And it's in a very different industry than I ever thought I would be working in. And I used to just see content creators, social media content creators, and that was kind of the only lens that I ever looked at content creation through. And I think I had a limited idea of what was possible. And then the more that I've broadened the scope of what I'm working on, and I had a really interesting conversation with a documentary filmmaker this morning who is very traditional, has worked with, like, you don't have these in the US, but like the BBC and Channel 4 and like the big channels over here. And we were talking about YouTube. And he was talking about he's worked in documentary filmmaking for the big channels for the past 15 years. And just with the way that the industry has completely shifted over the past 5-6 years, he's now asking me about YouTube. And he's now asking me about how he can get rid of essentially what are like, there's like two companies in this country within the traditional TV and film industry that are the gatekeepers of making the decisions as to whether good stuff gets made or not, and what their version of good is very rigid. And now he's asking me about YouTube. And I just find it so interesting that my path has been what I sort of almost feel is backwards, because of the way that my life was in my 20s. But now everything that I've learned up to this point about content creators and about YouTube and about this space is the kind of information and the knowledge that the traditional TV and filmmakers are asking for. And I just find it absolutely fascinating how much the possibility of what is coming has massively widened just away from being a social media content creator and building a business off the back of that into how this is essentially going to turn the traditional models of like TV and film media completely on their heads. And it's sort of insane and mind blowing to think about, especially when you think about AI and the amount of impact that's going to have on everything as well. I don't know if that answers
Yeah,
your question, but
it does. And I mean, it makes sense. Like I feel like I didn't grow up with YouTube because it first launched when I was probably in my late teenage years. But I feel like I grew up with it because I feel like I came into mental existence in my late teens and then into my 20s while YouTube was also kind of growing up. And I remember thinking in like 2010, watching YouTube and watching some of these creators blow up, like the inevitability of where all of that led to me felt pretty obvious. Like these are going to become celebrities and these people are going to have brands and they're going to make money. And I always thought that was interesting. And it probably had a pretty decent influence on how I've ended up where I am
Mhm.
in the space I'm in because I love watching content. I somewhat enjoy creating it, but I really love consuming it, obviously, as I share memes and GIFs and reels and stuff all the time. But between that and then, always kind of creating video content on the side, and then, probably 9 years ago, starting a job where I worked for a membership business.
Mm.
Um, and we were creating content, and that's how the founder had become who he was. He had been a public speaker and a pastor, and then had started creating content and built an audience online. And then from there we built this business that eventually was doing multiple six figures, close to seven figures.
Mhm.
And so that really started to shape how I thought about all these things and like what's possible with all of the content I had watched, to being a part of a business built on that kind of model, to being like, the subscription thing still feels so early and under
Mm.
leveraged. And then ending up at Uscreen, where for 6.5 years I created content for creators, which kind of a little bit meta there, and interviewed them and studied their businesses and all those kinds of things. So I think I feel like all of that has kind of shaped my worldview around it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, what did you, when it comes to growing as a creator, like, what are there any major things that you used to believe about being a creator or growing as a creator that you don't believe anymore?
Yeah, so interestingly, and I think this is part of the wider transition that I've had around what was a very limited view of content creation in terms of social media, is that I grew not to any sort of substantial amount, but I grew my personal social media channel in a very short period of time through just a little bit of timing and feeling like I was actually finally showing up, felt confident enough to show up as myself online in a way that I never had done before. And there was loads of different reasons as to why that was the case. But it was the perfect mix of those things that then meant that I had a number of reels that I'd started to create around a specific topic, which was dating and relationships, that went viral. And it was insane because I'd been on social media for so long and worked in this space for so long that I sort of believed that it was never really going to happen. And then it did. And then a couple of months later, I shut my account down and was like, I don't
Makes
want to
total
do
sense.
this. Despite the fact that I'd been working for so long to get to a point where I was like, once I hit this point, things will be different. And it's the thing that we all do as human beings. We believe that once we hit this certain point, everything's going to feel totally different. And my account grew, everything went insane. I was getting like DMs and constant loads of notifications and viral video after viral video. And then I was just like, no, I don't like it. And I shut it down. And I'm really glad I did. I don't regret making that decision, because I accidentally re-logged into it the other day when I thought I'd deactivated it, and I was like, no, no, close it. I don't want it anymore. Um, and I feel like that was a really important turning point for me to experience, because I'm sure every creator has their own version of this, where they are chasing something that they think is going to make a huge difference. They hit that point, it doesn't make a huge difference. But the beauty in that moment is then you go, okay, why hasn't this made a huge difference? What is it about this that is not satisfying? What is that telling me about what I actually need to be doing? And then off the back of that, I've now realized what I really care about is being able to create bigger pieces of work, like the podcasts that I do. My favorite ones are the ones that get into the real gritty emotion difficulty of being a human being and telling raw documentary style stories. And that's what I've been wanting to do for a really long time. So I need to focus on that now. And I know now that I can put that idea down of having a big social media following and having millions of views on stuff is going to make me happy, because I know it doesn't. And that didn't have any meaningful impact on my career at all, actually. It did nothing. I was making no more money. It didn't get me any connections that were of any sort of substance. But
Yeah.
leaning more into what I've learned off the back of that, and actually connecting with people in real life a little bit more and building those deeper connections with a smaller group of people, has had a much bigger impact. And I am making more money off that. And I am more satisfied with the work that I'm creating. So it's just going through that, oh, I thought this was going to be a thing and it wasn't, has been really important.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you brought up the viral moment thing that you went through, because you're not the only one I've talked to that's had that experience. There's
Mm.
actually a creator I have coached and talked with many times. I've spent time with them in person. And when I first started talking to this woman, she had 120,000 followers on Instagram. So a
Mhm.
pretty great following size. And then she ended up creating a reel where she like posed with a loaf of sourdough bread, like guys pose with fish in their dating profile pictures. And she like
I know it
made a
well.
huge joke out of it. And it went insanely viral, like 20 million plus views. It then got ripped by other accounts, and those accounts were getting millions of views on the videos, repurposing it. And I talked to her after the fact, because it ended up like she was at 120,000 followers when I first talked to her, and this is well over a year and a half ago probably. And then after that, she had probably gained like 50,000 followers
Mm.
from that reel, or reels like around that had gained traction as well. And I was like, "How was that?" And she was like, "It was great. I'm now over 200,000 followers, but I don't feel like it did anything for my business," because she has a membership. She has a subscription specifically around fitness and pre and postpartum stuff and strength training for women. And she was like, "I don't even think I got like one new subscriber that came during all that." And
Mm.
I was so disappointed. I was
Yeah.
like, "What? Why were you disappointed?" And she's like, "Well, I just assumed that if I went viral, that people would find me, and then they would find what I have to sell, and then they would buy from me." And I was like, "Well, sure, like that could happen, but I wouldn't say that that's the purpose of going viral." And I think most of us have the same kind of mindset that you had, or that uh, uh, this creator had, which is fine, but it's also just not typical. Like that is not how virality actually works. How it actually works is that um, creators like going viral is great, but you don't need it to be successful when you're creating a business. You don't have to have that element. You can never go viral and still build a sustainable, successful business making six figures a year, and it's no problem. I've worked with creators just like that. And in her case, like being going viral is just the top of the social funnel. Then she needs to build a relationship with those people, because they followed after one little quick instance. Then you need to build a relationship with them. Then you have to sell to them and all these things. So it's just a matter of finding the right steps with these things, rather than just banking on going viral and then people will find your link and you'll make money and you'll live happily ever after for the rest of the time, which isn't true. And that conversation with her was one of those moments where I realized, like, oh, creators don't necessarily need more content. they actually need guidance and people to lead them along, because most of them are great at training, they're great at educating, they're great at entertaining, they're great at whatever it is that they make content about, they're great at that thing. But when it comes to understanding the kind of macro or the big picture of everything, of like, how does going viral fit into your business strategy, or does it, or should you ignore that kind of attention, like most of them are clueless because that's not their area of expertise. Whereas I've been in this world entrenched for 15 years and studying marketing and practicing it and applying it in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. And so it was really just kind of like one of those eye-opening moments for her, then for me, and I'm sure like it was for you.
What I'm really curious to know off the back of that is when people started coming to you for your perspective on all of this.
Yeah. Well, I've had to do some like, I don't know if soul searching is the right word here. Remote viewing, is that is that something different? I think that's something different.
Remote
Um,
viewing. That's
yeah,
interesting.
you've never heard of
Are you
remote?
someone, is this a simulation theory thing? Is this where this podcast is going? I'm not sure I want to be involved.
Oh yeah, actually, this is the conspiracy theory
We're going to
podcast.
start talking about Elon.
Oh, can't wait! I would love to do a thesis on all that. No, this is just one of those things where like I don't think I don't think I do enough retrospective like or reflection for myself sometimes, because this is one of the things where if I look back at like the 6 years plus that I've been at Uscreen, people have been coming to me for my perspective for probably 4 of those years, if not
Mm.
more than that. Because there was something that happened when I started creating YouTube content for a company like that, and all about subscriptions and creators and that kind of thing. It just like elevated me a little bit, or positioned me as somebody with authority and expertise, which is true. But at the time, I didn't feel like that.
Yeah.
And so it took a while for me to realize like, oh, people want to hear what you have to say. And that continued to the point of like, I have reviewed probably hundreds of customers or creators' websites and given them feedback on landing pages and their content and all kinds of things. But honestly, it wasn't even till like a year ago that it clicked with me. Oh, you do have expertise, you do have experience, you do have value that you can add to all of these people. And it's taken confidence in my competence to make an actual shift and have me become the coach and kind of the advisor that I think I should be with creators.
Mm.
So it's really only been the last year. However, in the grand scheme of things, like people have been coming to me for probably 5 years, maybe more than that. And I've been answering comments on YouTube for 6.5 and longer than that, honestly, because I've run many, many YouTube channels over the years. But I think that's probably when
Mm.
it started for
And
me.
what, and was it like a case of people, you noticed that people started to ask you the same kinds of questions? And was it a case of
Ooh,
there was like a period of time where it became more condensed, that you were being asked
yeah.
the same amounts of questions, same kinds of questions?
Yeah, that was definitely a part of it. People were asking a lot of the same questions. Everyone thinks that funnels are the silver bullet for every problem that their business or their content has, which is true in some cases that it's the problem. But
Yeah.
usually there's other things at work. There are bigger things at play here. Like I, for example, you started a business and you're afraid of selling your business to potential customers.
Yeah.
A funnel might be a part of the problem there, but the bigger problem is you started a business where you have to sell a product in order to earn money, and you're not comfortable selling your own product, which is absolutely insane. That's mental behavior right there.
Mm.
So you have to be willing to sell your own product. And honestly, the further and deeper I get into coaching, I think that there are a handful of core issues that most people deal with. I'm starting to, I don't know if I'm getting jaded or what, but I'm starting to believe that there might even just be one core problem, which is that most people suck at selling. And when it comes to like messaging and talking about their business,
Yeah.
it is just so hard. It's honestly like speaking two languages, because you create your business, you create your content, you know everything about it. to then go speak to a customer who does not speak any of that language,
Mm.
it all gets lost in translation.
Yeah. And it's
So
wild
I
actually.
think
That is the case with pretty much every industry and every marketing team I go into, and that is the same problem.
exactly. And quick note before we keep going, most people who watch this video are not subscribed. If this conversation is helping you think more clearly about your business, hit subscribe. There will be new episodes every week. So going back to what you just said, like absolutely. I think it's the same. I see the same thing. I constantly am encountering websites where I'm like, they're talking about their own features,
Mm,
which is great. I probably do want to know about features at some point, but the
yeah.
features are not why I'm there first. Like you have to first tell me like, why does this matter to me?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
if that question isn't very clearly answered, which is an incredibly difficult, challenging question to answer,
Mm,
if you can't answer it clearly, you can't expect the audience to care and or to continue scrolling far enough to
no.
figure out what it is that you want them to do.
And that is one of the phrases that I feel like I sort of have to accept that perhaps I'm probably going to say this over and over again until the day that I die, is that yes, that's how you talk about it, but how do they talk about it? And how do they hear it? Because you you know it. You know it inside out, and you believe that everybody else knows it inside out too, but they don't. And so you need to speak how they speak. So go ask them. Go ask
Yeah.
them.
And I think one of the hardest parts here, and this is something that I 100% can sympathize with, is that
Mhm.
when I started coaching creators, and even before I started coaching creators, when I was doing site reviews and breakdowns of businesses, I felt underqualified.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I belonged there. I didn't feel like I had the credibility that people wanted or needed to then go teach them about how those things actually worked.
Mhm.
And I think they're dealing with the exact same thing, which is like, and this isn't true in all cases, but it is true in a lot of cases, especially like, as you know, living in the UK, people like selling is something that is so uncomfortable for so many people and feeling underqualified. And like, you have to have this insane level of expertise in order
Mhm.
to go out and talk about things or sell something to someone, which is just not true. Just ask a scammer.
Yeah.
Um, but I came to this realization of, okay, people keep telling me I'm good at this.
Mm.
The evidence is all pointing to me being qualified. Okay.
Mm.
If I'm qualified, then have I helped people? If
Mm.
okay, the answer is yes. Okay, we've got more signs pointing towards I am qualified. And if I'm qualified, then I am doing myself and my audience a disservice by not being confident in that and by not stepping forward into
Mm.
that.
Yeah, I'm curious on that point of because it is even though you're having those points of okay, all signs are pointing north, so I should go north. But it is also a huge amount of responsibility on your shoulders then to be almost like a beacon of knowledge and trust. They're going to put so much trust in you. Was there any fear around that responsibility and stepping into that role?
Yeah, of course. I still wake up some mornings thinking, what if I don't have the answer today? And
Mm.
there are people I have coached who have not gotten results. Just to be very blunt, very honest. It's rare. It is the exception rather than the rule. In fact, I was just doing some data crunching, and of the people that I coached, it was like greater than 80% of them saw growth in 2025. So, yes, it happens, but it is the exception and not the rule. And I don't know that I would be the coach I want to be or the helper that I want to be if I had a 100% hit rate, because
Mm.
then that means I know everything and I'm doing everything right. And I don't think that that should ever be true of anything ever in my life, because then that means there's no room for growth.
Yeah.
And there should always, always, always be room for growth. If my ears and my nose are going to keep growing for the rest of my life, I hope my brain and my coaching capacity will also continue to grow for the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
so I still wake up some mornings and I'm like, all right, well, today could be the day that I get on a call with somebody and I don't have the solution to their problem, or I don't feel confident in the direction I'm going to send them. And that's okay, because what I tell people in those instances is I don't know the answer,
Mm,
but because I have all this knowledge, because I have all of this experience, my inclination or my intuition is pointing towards this particular item. And here's a small test that we can run over the next 10 days, 14 days, 30 days, whatever it is. And that will give us direction. And that will tell us, okay, after that test is run, we should either go left or we should go right. But we'll have to make a choice
yeah.
and we'll have to move forward regardless. And I think that's the most important thing, especially when you don't know or have the answer to every
Yeah.
single problem.
100%. I totally agree. And I'm coming at it from a slightly different perspective, but a lot of my work now is I'm working with executives. Like I pretty much just work with execs, and I believed this in theory because I've never well, probably in my late 20s onwards, I would say I got to a point where I stopped being scared of saying I don't know. I
Mm.
don't know, but I'll go find out. And those two things together, whether you are a coach or you are the executive producer of a podcast with the execs of some like billion-dollar company, you're allowed to say, I don't know. But I think to the point of all of the trust that you've built in that relationship up until that point, then allows you to be the person who says, I don't know, but you can say, I don't know, I'm going to go and figure it out, or I don't know, but we're going to figure this out together. And I have found that actually that builds trust and buy-in and a stronger belief in your competency from the other person who's doing this with you, because you're not someone who knows everything, because no one does. And admitting that and then being like, but it's okay, I've got you, we're going to figure this out, can be one of the most powerful things that you do in relationship with somebody else.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I've come to terms with over the last year is that a coach doesn't have all the answers. But what they do have are fundamentals, and they're really good at fundamentals.
Mm,
And like I think about the times that I've hired a coach in my life and made significant progress, they did nothing special. They gave me the fundamentals, all of which I was pretty well aware of, but they held me accountable to consistently execute against those fundamentals. And that's what coaches do. It's why Michael Jordan had a coach. It's why Tiger Woods has a coach. All these incredible athletes have coaches because they're held accountable to be consistently performing at a high level with those fundamentals. And that's
mhm.
what I help all of these people do when I coach with them. Um, if people feel stuck right now, like what do you think are beliefs, or maybe just one belief that could be holding them back or quietly slowing them down aside from what we just discussed?
Oh, you're doing too much. You're trying to do too much. And I, so I'm on a little bit of a kick around this at the moment, and I feel like, so I don't do New Year's resolutions. I do words of the year, and I know that a lot of people do that as well. And this has been a relatively recent thing. I'd say I've only done it for the past couple of years. But last year, also for anyone into Chinese astrology, last year was year of the snake. Lots of shedding that was done last year, and I feel like I did that a lot last year. It was very intentional about I've got too much stuff. And it was like physical stuff and mental stuff and emotional stuff. There's just too much. And I've been carrying it for a really long time. And I've held this belief that I have to work every hour under the sun in order to get to where I want to go. Where in actual fact, that was holding me back in so many different ways, because I had no space to think. I had no space to think. I had no space to breathe. I had no space to like check in with myself and and figure out whether this thing was making me feel good or not. And so I got rid of a lot of stuff. And I've even I had a period of time where I went down to part-time hours, and I was only working like 3 days a week, which, as someone who's been self-employed since they're 22 and has just basically worked every hour under the sun and never taken a goddamn holiday, to all of a sudden be like, what, I'm only supposed to work 3 days a week? Like, you can't even, your body can't cope with it. But what that has allowed is space to just go, okay, you've put all of those things down and actually your life's gotten better. So maybe doing more is not the answer. It's just doing more of the thing that's going to get you to where it is that you want to go. And you can only figure that out by putting a lot of stuff down that you've been carrying for a long time and seeing how you feel without it, which is really uncomfortable. But I would say that's been the biggest thing for me. What about you?
Yeah. And just to piggyback on that, I think that like one of the first people I ever coached, I'll never forget this because it was so eye-opening for both of us.
Mm.
She was a mom of two. Her husband was out of a job for a little bit. And so she was the breadwinner, and revenue wasn't where she wanted with her business. And so I came alongside and I was like, okay, let's do a quick audit. How much time do you spend on this a week? And she was like, 20 hours, because I got kids, life, whatever. I was like, great, for 20 hours a week, like, you're doing pretty good. But what are you doing with those 20 hours?
Mm-hmm.
And like more than half of it was on following up with emails to people that didn't matter. And I was like, well, why do you think your revenue is going to grow if you're spending over half of your time just managing your email inbox?
Mm.
And it was just this light bulb moment for her of like, oh yeah, I'm not doing a good job of prioritizing the work that matters. In fact, I'm procrastinating intentionally the work that matters and putting it off because I feel unequipped to deal with it. I'm not sure how to solve it. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to hire people. I don't know how much to pay. I don't know who to trust. All of these fears just stacking up.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, she was doing too much of the stuff that didn't matter.
Yeah.
And then when I was able to help her shift that perspective and be like, okay, well, if you only have 20 hours a week, that's not a lot. And you can spend it doing this, this, and this that actually will move the needle, will increase your retention, and will increase your active subscribers. And now her business is in the strongest place it's ever been in 5 years of running it, which is amazing. But it was because she let go of the things that were not important that she thought was helping move the business forward, but she just didn't have the right perspective on it.
Yeah.
So she needed to shed it.
And it is hard to sit there and be like, okay, I'm doing all these things. They kind of annoy me a little bit. I don't really want to be doing that. Why am I doing them? And to be able to get to that point of realizing that you are subconsciously sabotaging your own success because you are procrastinating on the things that are important, and trying to find some sort of framework that's going to help you get you through that is, and that, I mean, that's where ChatGPT has been, and any other LLMs are available, but has been such a game changer for me because from an executive functioning point of view, it helps me figure out what I'm avoiding when I can't see it anymore because I've ended up getting stuck in this pattern of a loop that's just been ingrained in me for so long. I'm also doing a bit more of a deep dive into, I can't remember how to pronounce his surname, Greg McKeown, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's got 2 books, Essentialism and Effortless are his 2 books. Incredible systems for anybody who's wanting to really strip everything back and make the move on the things that are actually going to be really impactful for what you want.
I love that. And taking a step back, thinking about what you know about me, your experiences with me, and then the conversation we've just had, who do you think is going to get the most value from this podcast now and in the future?
As in between you and I, or from the audience?
From the audience. Like what kind of person, and whom, maybe even like, will they find it uncomfortable but helpful?
That is my hope. Uncomfortable but helpful is sort of how I live my life. If that was to be on my tombstone, I would like it to say she was uncomfortable but helpful. I I really love that phrase. Actually, I'm gonna keep that. Do you know what? and this is not a cop out answer, but I find it really hard to specify who is going to find this useful in terms of like whether it's a YouTube content creator or because I feel like everything is so meshing into each other a little bit now in terms of what a content creator actually is. Because you can be a content creator who just makes short form content for LinkedIn, or you can be a content creator who has a YouTube channel, or I just feel like the scope for what that is growing and growing and growing, and it's really difficult to be specific. But I feel like it is anybody who is sort of sick of being on the content creation hamster wheel, who's feeling burnt out by the fact that they're just doing things that they've been told to do by all of these people on the internet. So therefore that must be right. But actually it's making me really tired and I don't feel like I have any space to be creative and I don't really understand why I don't have space to be creative and I don't know how to get out of finding the space to be creative. But you know that you want to do something bigger with the creative artist animal that is living inside of you and you just don't really understand how to make that change, which I feel like is just a very different way of saying uncomfortable but helpful. Anyone who is okay with being uncomfortable but wants to be helped, this is for them.
I love that. That's great. All right, now I'm going to move into answering a question that I got on Instagram prior to this when I asked. And the question is, I've got a decent audience. People like my content. Engagement's fine. But when I try to sell anything, a membership, a course, an offer of any kind, it just kind of falls flat. How do I know if this is an audience problem or a business problem?
I'm curious to know what fall flat means in comparison to what and what
I'm going to
benchmark
guess
you're
it
running.
means like almost no sales. I think sure there could be an audience problem. I would to answer that question, I would ask your audience via questions in like polls or the question box in your stories on Instagram or whichever platform, or basically run a quick survey and be like, try and figure out like what do they want, how much are they willing to pay, those kind of things, and then figure out, does your product align with that, or do you have an audience product mismatch? Because that is entirely possible, that you are trying to sell something to people who don't want that thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's possible. However, I think in most cases it's not even a business problem, but this kind of sounds like it might be a you thing, and I mean that in the most loving way possible, uh, because people like your content. Great, that's somewhat arbitrary. Engagement is fine. That to me tells me engagement is not where it should be. Just
Mm-hmm.
because if you're just doing it as fine, that's not great. That's not exceptional. So I think there's work to do in engagement. And one of the things, actually, the customer I was talking about, or that I worked with and coached, who the 20 hours a week on and spending a lot of it on email, her engagement was one thing that I really wanted to work on early on with her Instagram presence. And
Mm,
so I was kind of evaluating things and looking through, and I realized she was responding to every comment, which is great when you have an audience that's like somewhat manageable to that scope. Like her audience was 20,000 ish, maybe just a bit under that. So the amount of comments she got was not overwhelming, but she was responding to all of the comments and just saying like, thanks, awesome, so proud, so great. And I was like, that's a missed opportunity, because
yeah.
those people are seeing that you're responding, but you're not inviting them deeper into conversation, which is
Mm-hmm.
what they really want. And so I challenged her. I was like, for the next week, every comment, I want you to respond with a thoughtful question, something to bring them back and get them excited. And in that week, her engagement skyrocketed and more than doubled,
Yeah.
because people were coming back and they were so excited that she had actually talked to them in the comments, that they were leaving not just one reply, but they like rage reply and like leave three quick replies, because they were so excited to have a conversation with her, because she is someone that they looked up to. And so her engagement went from fine to exceptional in a matter of a week. Now, is that sustainable long term? Maybe, maybe not. That's a whole different thing. But I think that kind of engagement helps make the selling process a lot easier. And so, getting to my kind of what I think the crux of the issue is here, is that I think it's a business/you problem that we've already kind of talked about today, which we'll dig into really deep in a future episode, which is that most people just aren't great at selling. They're not. We've all had a product experience where we got an ad or we saw a reel and we're like, how do they know what I'm thinking? Like, how did that person say the phrase that I've been saying to myself about this issue that I've been wanting to solve? And now they have that product that they're talking about seems perfect for me. It's because their research, they're great at selling, and they know how to lean into human psychology.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that more in depth, but curious if you would add anything to that, Becca.
No, I think everything you've said on that is fantastic. And it just makes me think back to some of the other stuff that we've spoken about in this episode, which is, okay, yeah, it might not be manageable to go in and do the grunt work that needs to be done to solve the problem right now because of everything else that you've got on your plate. But is there anything else that you've got on your plate that could be put down for a little while so that you can then go in and do that? Because I know from my experience of, especially if you are, you know, selling a slightly higher ticket product or something that is you're gonna expect a relatively large amount of loyalty from people in terms of the monthly subscription might not be that big, but over time it is a long time for you to be committed to one thing that you're going to pay out every month. If I think about the people that I would bite their hand off the second they've got something new coming out and I will spend money on it. I'm not aggressive, I promise.
It seems super aggressive. Seems a little uncomfortable, but maybe helpful.
But it is those creators that sort of in the comments when you've engaged with something, or you send them a DM and they do respond, and it's not, and you know that they make you feel like they care about you, and that over time is the thing that makes the difference. It is that you believe that you're not being sold to, you believe that you're building a relationship with this person, which is like the little trick that can happen sometimes that allows you to then be like, oh yeah, cool, I trust that I am going to spend money with this person and that they are going to give me what they say they're going to give me. So I just wonder what levers need to be like moved around a little bit in order to really focus in on that. And then you will, and also the benefit of doing that is that you will then create a feedback loop of, you will find out what they want from you by engaging with them as human beings, which will serve you so well.
Yeah. And in the coming episodes, we'll break down why so many creators stall. And it's not because they lack effort, but it's because they're solving the wrong problems. And if you've ever thought, I should be further along by now than where I currently am, we'll talk about why that feeling shows up and what to do about it. Becca, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Everyone watching, we're so grateful for you as well, and we'll see you in the next one. Ambient moaning.
I think that should just be the introduction.